Hi guys, it's Chantel here with my December reading wrap-up. I read 8 books in December and there were no books that were spectacular. I think 4-star was my highest rating, and there was one book that I personally thought was terrible. So we're gonna kind of go through each of those books today, and I don't know how I'm normally going to share the order of books, but I know today I want to start off by talking about the book that was terrible because I kind of just want to get it over with and stop thinking about it. There were a few things that contributed to my reading month, some things that helped it and some things that hindered it. I kind of want to take a moment each month and think about those things because I think it will help me throughout the year to realize kind of what's the pattern that I'm seeing, I guess, what's helping me with my reading and what's hindering me. So the first thing that helped me this month was the fact that I took a social media fast. I was off of Instagram and Facebook for the month of December, and so that added a lot more time to my day. A couple things that hindered my reading a little bit was the fact that I was doing a 90-day Bible reading plan. I actually did it in like 83 days, I think. So there was about 15 chapters a day that I was reading from the Bible, which took up a lot of my time throughout the day. So that was one of the things that hindered my reading. And another thing was just, life in general, Christmas things, stuff like that we had going on. But all in all, I think the social media fast and the stuff in my life kind of balanced each other out. So I had a decent amount of reading time, I think. Let's get right into the first book that I want to talk about this month, and it's the one that I did not like at all. I gave it 2 stars on Goodreads, and that was being generous. I think it's like a 1.5-star book, but I usually round up for Goodreads. Whew, it's a doozy. Okay, it's The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. I know a lot of people really like this book. A lot of people really like him as a writer. I'm not so convinced. I have read his children's book. It's called Fortunately the Milk. The kids and I love it. We listen to it on audio. He's hilarious. Great writer, great narrator. Love him. Until I read this book. So just to give you a little synopsis, I think it's a magic realism book is kind of where it fits. I just thought it was weird though. So it's about a guy that goes back home for a funeral, and he kind of goes down memory lane and thinks about some things that happened in his childhood. I'm not on board with the whole magic realism genre itself maybe, but also I felt like the character was so not likable and kind of unbelievable. As an adult, he kind of just seems lazy and depressed, and I just didn't really like him. As a child, I thought he was unbelievable. So for his 7th birthday, he had a birthday party, his mom has everything laid out, and no one shows up. And he's all like, meh, I got to open the Batman figure that we were gonna use for a game, and I don't care that no one came. I don't think that a 7-year-old would think that way. This legitimately happened to my mom when she was 5. She had no one come to her birthday party, and she still talks about it to this day. She wasn't all like, it's not a big deal. She's scarred. I don't think that the 7-year-old wouldn't care that no one came to his birthday. My favorite part of the book was actually the acknowledgements. I gotta read this to you. So, not only because the book is finally over, but it says, this book is the book you have just read. It's done. Now we're in the acknowledgements. This is not really part of the book. You do not have to read it. It's mostly just names. And this to me showed the wittiness that I love about Neil Gaiman from the children's book that I've read before. And I wish he would write like that. I wish this wouldn't have happened. I slogged through the book because I read on Goodreads that the ending was spectacular. And the ending was better. It bumped it up from a 1-star in my opinion to a 1.5-star. But I don't know what I'm missing that other people love so much, because a lot of people give it a 4 and 5-star on Goodreads, and my 2-star rating definitely brought that down a bit. If you love this book, I would love to chat about it with you. If you also do not understand it, please let me know that I'm not alone. Now let's get on to some better books, okay? So I read a variety of different books this month. The next one is a middle grade book. It's called The Dark Hills Divide, and I've been reading a number of different middle grade fantasy books, kind of just to proofread them for my daughter. This one was all right. It's about a girl who lives in this city that the city is walled, and the roads to the next city are all walled, and it's kind of she gets to go outside and explore and see what's beyond the walls. And it's a cute little fantasy book. I'm not huge into the fantasy genre myself, so I think if someone was, they might like it. Like, if you're a middle grade child and you are into fantasy, I think you'll enjoy this book. If you're an adult that is or isn't into fantasy, it's not really made for adults. Like, there's the middle grade books where adults will read it and love it, in my opinion, and then the ones that are okay, but only middle grade kids will like it, and that's kind of where this one falls. It was okay, but not really something I enjoyed as an adult, which is okay too. It's not really, that wasn't my purpose with this book. The next book I read is a Christian historical nonfiction book, I guess. It's called it's called Peril and Peace, and it's made for middle grade as well. So this is one of the ones I'm thinking of getting my daughter to read in the next few months as part of like a history. So it's different stories of the ancient church, so early Christians, and the stories are really interesting, I find. It's hard to kind of give this one a good review or rating because there's not a whole lot of details, obviously, from things that happened in the first century. So I understand that they're missing a lot of background. I do wish there would have been maybe a little bit more of an introduction to each chapter. Kind of each chapter, it follows or tells the story of a different ancient Christian. So I don't know, it was a good read. They have a whole series and it goes through all the different time periods up into modern day. And so I would like to get all of them and have my daughter read them and go through them. And I think that as they progress, as there's stories with more details, they'll be better than this one. But it was a definite, like a good start. And I want to continue with the series. The next book I have was sitting on my nightstand probably for a year and a half maybe. And I've been meaning to read it forever, and I'm glad I finally got it off my shelf. And it's a marriage book. It's called The Mingling of Souls by Matt Chandler. This one isn't at all what I expected it to be. I thought it was a marriage book, but it's kind of like, well, it follows the Song of Solomon, which is a book in the Bible, and it breaks it down. And I found that very interesting, except that it starts out like before people are even dating. It starts out with attraction and then dating, and then I don't even remember how it progresses, but eventually it goes into marriage and stuff. And so it felt maybe not as applicable as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was just going to be like a marriage book. And it was started off with before dating, which is not really applicable to my life. But I mean, it's Matt Chandler. It's a good book. It was very interesting to read what Song of Solomon is actually trying to say in the book, because man, that is one confusing book of the Bible. So I think I also gave this one 3 stars. There's a lot of like middle of the road books this month. The next book was my Christmas themed book, and that is Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot's Christmas. I probably really butchered the name, but whatever. I wanted to read this one because it has Christmas in the title, and it was Christmas in December. I thought it would have more like Christmassy vibes throughout. I mean, I know it's Agatha Christie, so it's murder mystery. I'm not sure how Christmassy you can get. But I was expecting a little bit more Christmas and not so much just like murder mystery. It was good. I normally read her books in about a day or two, and this time I spread it out. I think I read it over the course of a week and a half or 2 weeks because I wanted to really think about like whodunit kind of thing. And I just apparently would be a terrible detective because once again, I had no idea who did it. I think I gave this one 4 stars because as long as she keeps me guessing, I can't go lower than 4 stars. I really like her writing style. I like kind of how the cast of characters is always there. And you can never guess who it is. I don't know. I'm going to continue with Agatha Christie this next year. I've been collecting her books as I find them, and I have a lot more that I haven't read yet. So, I mean, she still has me hooked. Eventually, I'm going to figure out who did it. This next book, I think gave 4 stars on Goodreads. And it's kind of like, I need to explain the reason I gave it 4 stars. So it's The Clockmakers Daughter by Kate Morton. I think this book was very similar to the rest of Kate Morton's books. I think I've read all of hers but one so far. This one follows, it's got a number of different storylines from like a number of different perspectives over a number of different years. So I always find her books kind of hard to follow because there's so much going on. I have a hard time remembering who all the characters are and like which time period we're in. This particular one follows a group of friends that go to a house for a summer, and someone dies, someone goes missing, someone goes crazy, and one of the narrators, like the main narrator throughout the whole book, is a ghost. And yeah, so the whole time you're trying to figure out like the mystery. I don't know why it always takes her like so many pages to tell her stories. I kind of wish she would write her stories in about like 300 pages, maybe 250, instead of the almost 500 that she does. I don't like the process of reading Kate Morton's books. I always kind of have to push myself to read them, but I'm always really interested to see how she ties all the threads together. And when I say that, I do feel like sometimes she leaves a few threads off and doesn't quite answer all my questions, but I do find it interesting to see how she kind of brings all the different storylines together. This one bothered me a little bit more than some of her previous books because there was a character in the book that had the mystery all solved, but just didn't tell people about it. So because of that, if she would have just said what she knew, she would have saved some people from a lot of heartache, let's say. I don't really know how much to say without, giving it all away. Yeah, so it's kind of like the miscommunication trope right there, and without it, like, this book would have been pointless. So I don't know, it's an interesting read. I do plan on continuing to read her books, but they always kind of frustrate me a little bit when I do read them. I found this one at the library. They're used books, so I bought it for $1. That's about what I'll pay for a Kate Morton book. Like, it's a good read, but I'm not gonna like buy it new or anything like that. My next read for the month is the second book, well, kind of. It's The Two Towers, which is part of The Lord of the Rings, and I quite enjoyed this book. The first one took me like 8 months to read, and the second one I read within like 2 weeks. So this continues to follow like Frodo and Sam and then the rest of the company as they kind of, continue to Mordor. One thing I did not like is that this book is broken into 2 books. Kind of like, so it's the first one, actually, The Fellowship of the Ring has book 1 and book 2. The Two Towers has book 3 and book 4. And book 3 here follows the company minus Frodo and Sam. And I really enjoyed that part of the book. I loved Legolas and Gimli and their little counting their body count as they, try to kill all the orcs and stuff. But then we get into book 4 and we're following Frodo and Sam, and it's so like slow and dark and depressing. And what I wish Tolkien would have done is kind of flip-flop back and forth between perspectives. And when I say that, like, I generally don't like it when authors do that, but I feel like the company had such a fast-paced action story, and then Frodo and Sam was so like plodding along that I would have liked to kind of go back and forth instead of like all fast-paced and then just like all really slow. So that's what I would change. I think the movie does it that way, like back and forth. I have to actually go and watch this movie now. Overall, it was really good. I have a few different quotes that I have tabbed here that I enjoyed, and yeah, there's like a scene between Frodo and Sam where they talk about adventure that I just love so much. And I mean, it's a good book. This is definitely my favorite over Fellowship of the Ring so far, and then hopefully for January I'm going to read the last one, The Return of the King, and we'll see if that trumps this one or not. The last book, and the one I enjoyed the most this month, was actually the book 3 of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I've enjoyed book 1 and 2, but book 3 kind of took it to like a whole new level for me. I feel like this one there was a lot more going on than there was in book 1 and 2, and I don't know, I really liked it. I don't know how much to go into it because I feel like everyone has either read Harry Potter or hasn't and doesn't want to. I've been proofreading the series for my daughter, who is 9. She has read this book, but then she hasn't read the ones after it, and I know she really liked this one, and so I want to keep going to see, I don't know, when I think she should be able to read the subsequent books. And I'm excited that now I can talk to her about this book because she's kind of been itching to chat about it for the last few months. And I'm really excited to continue on with the series because I feel like this one left on a really good note that I feel a little bit more invested than I did after book 1 and 2. So that is my reading month in a nutshell. It was kind of all over the place as far as genres go. For the next year, I plan on reading a whole lot more fantasy books, so we'll see how that goes. I think there'll be a lot more fantasy and a lot less other genres in my wrap-ups, but anyway, those are all my books for December.